Joining me this morning is Dr. Kevin Aten, the superintendent for Bayfield schools. And I thought it was about time we heard from the absolute source about how things have changed in the school system here. And that's absolutely an eastern side of the La Plata County thing. So, Kevin, can you tell us a little bit about how things have changed in terms of the learning and so on, from going to the classrooms to the online things?
Yeah, good day, Jeff. Thanks for inviting me in to talk a little bit about what I believe is a passion of mine. And that's I think what people forgot in all of this is the power of public education. If you ask teachers to sit down and tackle a problem and you get out of their way, boy, can they get a lot done. And we had a pretty good idea, all of us in early March, that this might be pretty serious. So the week before spring break, which for us was around March 11th, 12th, 13th, we started putting some plans in place of what this could look like if things would change. And then over our spring break, that next week of, March 16th, a lot of us on the principal side of the house and myself didn't get a spring break. We were already trying to do some of the back work, put some things in place so that when our teachers came back from spring break, we get to hit the ground running. We were also prepping families. My communication to families during spring break was, go ahead, enjoy your spring break. We'll start this the next week. So after spring break, in the course of 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, we had some in-services. We talked to teachers. We started this online thing. And then by Wednesday, the goal was for every teacher to call their students. We made that goal. We started teaching in basically 3 days. We started putting some things online. That Wednesday and Thursday after spring break, we distributed devices, and we were teaching kids by that Thursday.
Did you get much direction from anyone out of the school district, or just you kind of making it up as you're going?
No, some of it, we had some pretty good implementation. So the way you do this is, think about it as, the old days, a teacher would have folders with worksheets and they would pass things out. The new way to do it is with technology and what we in the school business call a learning management system. That's a way of having those folders on the computer, keep things organized. You can put in videos. We had a robust learning management implementation at our middle school in a platform we call Schoology. Many of our high school teachers we pay for that, and it's a really robust, it'll grade papers, it'll do a whole bunch of things. The bare bones version is which everybody's hearing about now and parents have learned about, is Google Classroom. Google Classroom we were using at our 3-5 school and at our high school, but not in every classroom. We have teachers that are pretty traditional at Bayfield High School. We still have chalkboards and chalk. And so we had some people that had to make some conversions. They had never been in a Google Hangout, a Google conference call, like a Zoom call. They had never taught that way. So we did a little upfront training. That was pretty good in those 2 days. And then people dove in. Also, we got very lucky a little bit. Last summer, sort of on a whim, the technology director and I, Bill Bishop, had offered these classes to make people Google certified educators. So we had 30 plus educators, I think, who've gone through, taken the test. So out of our 80-ish classroom teachers, we had 30 who were really good experts who could support the other teachers who followed through. We had about 40 go through the Google training, at least 30 some became Google certified educators. With that happening last summer and that kind of ramped up our implementation, those people became kind of gurus for the other people who needed the support. And then, you know what? Everybody just dug in and started doing it.
Well, it's great to have those mentors in there. That really had to shorten the process a lot.
It did, and it meant teachers could collaborate. And one thing that teachers do well is collaborate, speak to each other, work together. If again, it's the same in I think in any industry. If you get out of their way and say, please solve this problem, and let them go, boy, educators will find a way, and they found a way in a span of a couple days.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
I remember you talking about the goal of keeping connections and relationships going. How did you do that?
Well, pretty simple. My first message to our staff was 3 words: that, yeah, we were going to educate. Yeah, we're going to do some different and interesting things with kids, but that relationships was going to be our first thing. As I told you, we started out pretty old school. We used the telephone. We called people. We connected with them and said, this was the environment we're going to, and this is what we're going to be doing. That was the foundation of what we did, because in a small district, a little smaller district like ours, we're not teeny tiny in Colorado. As you may know, out of the 178 districts in Colorado, 120 of those districts have less than 1,000 students. We actually have 1,400 students, so we're in the top 40 probably size districts in Colorado. But for us, having that connection, teachers can actually get out and actually make those calls and connect with families. Now, there were some funny moments. There were some parents in the high school who got 7 emails for each of the teachers with instructions. And so we learned some things too. I'm not saying it was all perfect and rosy, but ultimately we got the information out. And the key was to communicate and stay focused on those relationships and keep the kids and the families connected.
How much are the kids using their computer resources to talk to each other?
They are, and so they really do. And so, like, I witnessed one family who had they had their devices and their their Chromebooks and their school devices going, and then they were teaching and talking to other class members on their iPhone with FaceTime. So they had FaceTime going with multiple kids working together and doing their work on the Chromebook. They can also back channel chat through Google and be able to do that. Also, we actually set up some class structures in the 9 o'clock hour every day through Bayfield High School in a Google Hangout, a Zoom meeting like this. We're teaching math. But what's different about those math sessions is they record them so that if one of our students can't make that session, a student can come back at any time and watch it and still complete the math. We also hired a teacher that we hired her for next year, but we've hired her as a substitute now, and she's been doing math tutoring in the afternoon with our students.
I'm familiar with the Khan Academy in terms of an online teaching thing. Have you utilized systems like that outside of your teaching network?
We do. We have we've used Alex for math. There are some of the softwares that we've continued to use, but predominantly because this is a new environment, our teachers have developed a lot of the processes and resources, and they're either loading those in Google Classroom or they're loading those in Schoology, and that's how they're able to do what they're doing with our kids. So we also, again, another kind of serendipitous thing last year that we did was we purchased some online curriculum that we could also plug into Schoology, and that's been pretty successful. Teachers can pick and choose. So they're not trying to reinvent everything, but also, quite honestly, there's just some things that work better in a brick and mortar classroom that do not work in online.
But you feel like the old guard has been able to make this change pretty easily.
They have, and that's I think what we've done in education, to be quite honest, is that there were we had this term called blended learning, or that where you would use technology to assist learning. Mm-hmm. I think what we've seen in the last month is that we've probably moved the needle on using technology to personalize or blended learn or do more with technology to personalize that education for kids. In the last month, we've probably moved the needle a decade. And I don't think that's not a bad thing, because as we all know, these kind of crises become the mother of invention, and that's what's happened.
I think that's fascinating. How many devices did you deploy, and how did all that happen?
So we are very fortunate that we have devices for grades 3 through 12. And so we had 1-to-1 3 through 12. Our high school kids, 9 through 12, take the devices home and have access to them. And when you finish and graduate from Bayfield High School, you actually take that Chromebook with you. You know, by that time they're 4 years out of date, and they're, you know, they're not current. And so when you come into our 6th grade and our 9th grade, you get a brand new set of Chromebooks. That's not uncommon in what you see in rural schools in Colorado. We have a lot more devices than the rural urban schools oftentimes have. Now, those were tied to carts in grades 3 through 5
Right.
and 6 through 8. So they were all wound up and the chargers were all in there, and this had all been custom done. Everything was beautiful. So over spring break, we started jerking out those power supplies out of those carts, stacking them, getting labels on them, and know that we had to deploy them. So between the high school and all the grades, we deployed about 700 Chromebooks to kids. And over the span of those 2 days, that Wednesday and Thursday after spring break.
I'm curious, do the kids take care of those? Do you have casualties amongst the Chromebooks, or?
We do have Chromebook casualties, but to be quite honest, we've had less Chromebook casualties in this environment, because I think part of it is that a lot of our casualties happen at school from just getting used or getting knocked off and having sometimes 20 kids in tight spaces. I don't think a lot of these devices are leaving the kitchen table, so I think we're actually a little safer.
I could see the backpack flying across the bus, that kind of thing.
It happens. And what we do is that kids buy insurance. We have a little insurance program we do, and we repair them, and we charge a little fee, and then we just keep money. And that's one thing about the Chromebooks is they're pretty, number one, they're pretty durable, but also they're pretty repairable. And our not only does our tech department, but during a more typical school year, we have students who actually help repair them.
Oh boy, that's great.
Yeah.
Have you had any broadband problems in terms of us living out here in the Pioneer Field?
That's the cruel irony, is that you take most small rural school districts in Colorado, they have plenty of devices, and we have mostly okay internet at the building. Like us, we have 300 megabit, you know, up and down. We have Bill Bishop has made sure that we have a redundant fiber loop to all of our schools and a direct connection to that backbone to the internet. We're great until you leave the schoolhouse. And what, for years and years, Colorado has been promised that we're going to bring real broadband to rural Colorado. Well, that promise has clearly not been fulfilled. And this process has pointed that out. So if you live very far off the beaten road, and sometimes not very far off the beaten road in Colorado, you go from that 300 megabit connection at a school where you could do anything you want, to you're lucky if you can get 1 megabit at your house. And heaven forbid you live in these beautiful places up in the north end of our district around Vicedo. If you can't make a cell phone call, then you can't hit a hotspot either. And so
yeah, how do you
that's really a problem.
Yeah, how do you compensate for that with folks that don't have internet or have lousy connections?
2 ways. One, that what we've done is we've been able to maintain we just picked Tuesdays. That was just the day. We have some families who have to do a packet exchange. So on Tuesdays, through our high school, middle, and grades 3 through 5, they come in and do a packet exchange. They bring in the work and take out new stuff. Learning packets, because we didn't have devices at K2, and K2 looks a little bit different, we gave them about a month's worth of stuff, and now we just did a new packet exchange to get us through one full packet, our K2 littles, you know, our little learners through the rest of the year. So theirs looks quite a bit different. They don't have the technology. We've had a couple families that kind of needed some devices, and we've been able to help them a little bit. But, you know, we've also seen some really interesting things that come out of this. We've seen our Chromebooks make it out to the barn. We've seen bring your animal to school day, and we've been able to bring all of our animals. There aren't any allergies. There are not any problems. You don't have to worry about bringing a horse in the schoolhouse. People could bring the technology. And so even sometimes off a hotspot or slow internet, we've been able to do some kind of cool things that kids wouldn't otherwise be able to do. Where I have been, and I have said this personally to the governor, the fact that broadband has really not been brought to rural Colorado, those chickens have come home to roost. I mean, this is really a problem. And it's not any different, because think about it in Bayfield. Most of the internet is either DSL which is really sort of a shared connection. It's not that fast or it's wireless. And now with everybody home and on the internet, those shared connections are not being very successful. It's not successful.
Yeah. And so what are you hearing from the governor on that?
They're trying. And so like one thing, all these hotspot providers wanted a year-long contract. That's the other thing I said to the governor. That's ridiculous. We've actually found a provider that's going to do month to month with us, and those hotspots are coming in, any day, and we've been able to deploy with families that way.
Wow, that's great. So what have been some of the real successes that come to mind?
I think part of this is that what I think some students have absolutely excelled in this environment. They have been able to find out that they can be responsible for their own learning, because what's happened is that parents are home working at the kitchen table, and what I've tried to tell them is that put this responsibility back on the child. And that's worked. Now the kid has to email the teacher. The kid is interfacing with the teacher. And I think there's some kids who school's a little bit of struggle. There's a lot of kids there. That's a problem. There's been some kids that have absolutely excelled. Now, there's some kids who also get a great deal of support from people being there and from being at school and from our adults and our counselors. And they do some amazing work with them. Those kids are struggling a little bit because they're not getting that kind of direct support. The screen and the computer and the phone call is not as much as if they were there every day. So it's like any typical change that we go through. There are some kids who've excelled and love this environment. And what we've done in the school district is say no more than 2 to 3 hours a day, kind of learn, don't overload them. And that's worked out splendidly, but for a few of our more social, emotionally challenged kids, because we believe one of our 4 pillars of our strategic plan is our well-being. It's been a problem. We know that.
And how much do you think the parents have learned about this new platform?
I think it's amazing. I think one of the outcomes of this is going to be that parents are going to have a renewed appreciation for what we do in education and what teachers do. And what I tell parents is, I know you got your two little gems, your joys at the table. We put teachers in the room with 20, 30, 40 kids per day in this environment. And I think if one amazing good outcome of this is going to be that there is a renewed love, not that there wasn't love, but a really renewed sense of love and appreciation for what teachers do and what we do in education. And I just really believe that. And so, but parents have learned, like I said, they've learned about Google Classroom. They know more about Schoology than they want to know. They've learned what a Google Hangout is. And many parents have, through their work, have learned how to conduct a Zoom meeting.
Have you had opportunities to parent-teacher meetings over the electronics?
We have, for like our individual education plan students, our students who need a little extra support. We've ported those kinds of meetings from a face-to-face, and we've been able to do that over this environment as well. So there will be some, that way some of the work and the planning and the things that we need to do naturally to support those kids, that's continued.
Right. So now I really tap your expertise as superintendent, and that is, what are the tea leaves telling you about upcoming?
That's a tougher question. We all know that. Right now we're kind of operating in 2 worlds. The one world that we're operating in is we are hiring teachers. We are almost, after today, we should be fully hired for next year. We're hiring teachers and we're going forward, and we're assuming that we're going to have next school year. Now, some of the tea leaves out there and reading them are saying that maybe we'll have to do some things differently. We could possibly, for one example, be taking temperatures and monitoring kids. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's one thing that other states are considering. Clear up to more draconian things of split schedules, and other states are looking at that, reducing the numbers, keeping the numbers down. But right now, the plans we're making is to go forward with a typical kind of school year. And what I would ask parents and people to understand is that when we take out state testing, when we take out some of the end of the year activities that we've had, what we're really looking at is about 4 weeks, 4-ish weeks of instruction. We can make that up next year. As I've told our staff, it's really about that growth mindset. It's really about being ready to hit the ground running. Yeah, we might cut out a few pep assemblies. We might cut out some fluffy things that we do that are really awesome for kids, but and really kind things. But I think we're just going to have to all put our noses to the grindstone and work hard next year. And I think we can easily make up this as long as we can get a typical start to the school year. And so that's our plan. We're really focused on a typical, hit the ground hard, running as fast as we can, but also know that we're kind of working on what could plan B and C look like at the same time. And because that's the part we don't know. And it's very clear that we're going to be in an environment where larger gatherings are going to be restricted, I think, for some time. It's just hard to know what that some time frame is.
Well, and I would like to recognize the expertise of you and your staff in terms of dealing with these things. They're not easy, and certainly parents are willing to lean in and tell you how to run all this. But I appreciate the fact that you're taking safety as the paramount concern here, and not rushing things.
Well, and I want to compliment our staff too, because like at our high school, we've engaged at some level with 100% of our kids. I hear these other superintendent stories where they're getting 20, 30, 40% of a high school to engage. We're getting over 95% of the kids in the Bayfield School District to engage. That's not just about our kids. That's not just about our teachers. That's about our community. And our parents, families have bought into this. We've not done what other districts have done and all these silly X grades and weird stuff. We've continued to teach new material. We've said, show up, work hard. We've given grades. All of it has worked out very well. But we've acknowledged that this fourth quarter is not like any other fourth quarter, and that we're being very flexible, very nimble, and yet we're still learning. And again, that's a testament to being in a little smaller school district and being in an amazing place like Bayfield.
Have you had to manage any COVID infections amongst staff or students? Has that intruded into your world?
No, we had one staff member get sick, but we don't believe it was COVID. We did, right before spring break, have a family that was in Barcelona.
Uh-huh.
And they went through a full 30-day quarantine, never got sick. Well, but there were students in a family that had to come back, and as you realize, that was right when the president closed up travel, and they went through a lot of different airports to get back to Bayfield, Colorado from Barcelona, Spain, and yet nobody in the family was ill.
Well, I mean, that's a huge blessing that you didn't have to manage actual infections and so on. So
yeah, not yet. Not yet. We'll see what happens, but we've been careful during this time. Like, we've served 150 lunches a day, but our people have been in masks since the beginning. We've practiced good social distancing. We've always made sure that those employees are working apart, as well as we've kept we've got families pretty well trained. I saw one kid. I was out there one day who got 14. This kid, the lunches were practically bigger than her, but she got 14 lunches for 3 families in her neighborhood and carried them out. So we've been able to do it, and I think that's again testament to our staff and our community and what we've been able to do. Our nutrition staff, we're doing. All of us are doing this amazing work for kids and families.
It's fabulous, and but again, I appreciate your leadership here. And a lot of people don't understand the connection between the fire district and the schools, but we're pretty tight on what we do because we support each other well, and I value the relationship and the fact that the school district does a very good job of managing the school district. I look around other districts and see that not happening. So once again, I appreciate that.
Thanks to the fire district, the EMS, the first responders in our area, because, the marshal's office, we have a good relationship because all of us talk and we work at it. And I think that's what's a lot of times these organizations don't seemingly have paths that cross. And we get it, that building that community up comes from the fire district, the marshal's office, the sheriff's office, the school district, the town, the town of Bayfield. We all work together, and I'm grateful for that collaboration.
Oh, yeah, and we are too. Well, I'd like to update this occasionally, but I want to thank you for joining me today. Once again, it's the team that gets it done. As
right.
always, I have to call out the incident management team that is kind of managing this thing on the edges. And also, we'd be remiss if we didn't say wear a mask, save a life. And
That's right.
that's important for us. So, well, thank you, Dr. Aten, and we look forward to talking in the future.
Okay, Mr. Dye, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
All right.